Imagine this for a second. You're standing in the middle of a vast desert. The sun is burning your skin, the wind is dry, and in front of you rises something so massive, so perfectly shaped, that your mind almost refuses to believe it was built by human hands. Now here's the real question. What if, right now, in today's modern world, we decided to build the Great Pyramid again? Not a smaller version, not a replica for tourists, but the exact same structure, same size, same weight, same precision. Something that could still stand 4,500 years from now. It sounds simple at first, right? We have machines, we have technology, we have cranes, AI, GPS, laser cutting. So surely we can do what ancient people did with ropes and stones. But here's the twist. The moment you actually start breaking it down, step by step, reality hits hard. And what looks like a simple triangle in the desert suddenly turns into one of the most impossible and terrifying engineering challenges ever imagined. Because building the Great Pyramid today isn't just difficult, it's almost insane. And by the time you reach the end of this story, you might start wondering if we've really advanced as much as we think we have. Because sometimes, the past is more powerful than the present. Now, let's go back for a moment. Thousands of years ago, when there were no machines, no engines, no electricity, a civilization decided to build something that would outlive generations. The Great Pyramid wasn't just a building, it was a statement, a symbol of power, belief, and legacy. Back then, it served a purpose. It was built as a tomb, a sacred place tied to religion, kingship, and the idea of life after death. And that purpose, that belief, was powerful enough to push thousands of people to work for decades under extreme conditions. But today, we don't have that same motivation. We don't build massive structures just to honor the dead. Everything we create now has to serve a function, something that brings profit, value, or utility. And that's the first problem. Because without a strong reason, no government, no company, no billionaire would willingly spend billions just to recreate something that already exists. But let's ignore that for a moment. Let's assume someone actually says, let's do it. Let's build the Great Pyramid again. What happens next is where things start getting complicated. The very first challenge isn't building, it's land. You can't just pick any random location and start stacking millions of tons of stone. The ground has to be incredibly stable. It has to handle pressure that most modern structures don't even come close to. We're talking about a structure weighing around 6 million tons. To put that into perspective, that's heavier than thousands of airplanes combined. So before a single stone is placed, engineers would spend months, maybe years, scanning the ground, testing soil strength, checking for seismic stability, and making sure the land won't collapse under pressure. Even preparing that land would cost millions. And once the land is ready, you still don't have a pyramid. You just have an empty piece of desert waiting for a nightmare to begin. Because now comes the foundation. In ancient times, builders relied on natural bedrock, but today, that's not enough. Modern engineers would likely build a reinforced concrete base to ensure long-term stability. That means pouring hundreds of thousands of tons of concrete. Think about that for a moment. Before even starting the pyramid, you've already spent years and hundreds of millions just creating something no one will ever see because it's buried underground. And this is where reality starts creeping in. You haven't built anything visible yet, but the money is already disappearing. And now comes the real challenge, the stones. The Great Pyramid is made up of around 2.3 million stone blocks, each one weighing between 2 to 60 tons. Let that sink in. 2.3 million individual pieces, each one cut, shaped, and placed with incredible precision. Now imagine trying to produce that today. Even with modern factories, cutting that many massive stones isn't easy. You would need hundreds of high-powered machines working non-stop. And even then, it would take decades. If one machine cuts 100 stones a day, you'd still need decades to reach the required number. So to speed things up, you'd need hundreds of machines running at the same time. And these aren't small tools, they're heavy industrial cutters that consume massive amounts of electricity. Which means now, you're not just building a pyramid, you're basically running a full-scale industrial operation for years.
And that costs a fortune. But here's where it gets even worse. The type of stone matters. The outer layer of the pyramid used a special kind of white limestone that made it shine under the sun. Inside, granite was used for key chambers, an extremely hard and expensive material. Today, both of these materials are costly, So just the raw material alone would likely push the budget into the billions. And remember, you still haven't stacked a single stone. Because now comes transportation. And this is where things start to feel almost impossible. The original stones were transported over long distances, some from hundreds of kilometers away. If we tried to do the same today, we'd need thousands of heavy-duty trucks moving day and night for years. Each truck carrying massive blocks across highways, deserts, and rough terrain. Fuel costs, logistics, maintenance, manpower, everything adds up. At one point, you'd have an entire fleet of vehicles constantly on the move just to keep the construction going. And even then, it wouldn't be smooth. Delays, breakdowns, accidents, all of it becomes part of the process. By now, the cost has already crossed billions. And we're still not building. We're just preparing. But finally, after years of planning, cutting, transporting, the real moment arrives. Construction. This is where things become truly terrifying. Because stacking stones isn't the challenge. Stacking them with precision is. The Great Pyramid isn't just big, it's accurate. The alignment, the angles, the structure, everything is so precise that even modern engineers struggle to explain how it was done. And today, to match that level of perfection, you'd need advanced cranes, laser measurements, GPS systems. But even then, there's a limit. Some stones in the pyramid weigh up to 80 tons. Lifting something that heavy to a height of over 140 meters, that's not easy. Modern cranes have limits. The higher they lift, the less weight they can carry. So you'd need a network of specialized cranes constantly being adjusted as the pyramid grows taller. And every adjustment takes time. Every delay costs money. And every mistake could be deadly. Because this isn't just construction anymore. It's high-risk engineering. Thousands of workers operating massive machines, lifting enormous stones, working under extreme conditions. One small error, and everything can go wrong. Safety alone becomes a major expense. Insurance, training, equipment, emergency systems, all of it adds to the cost. Years pass. Money keeps flowing. Pressure keeps building. And slowly, the pyramid begins to take shape. Stone by stone, layer by layer, until finally, after nearly a decade, you have something that looks like the Great Pyramid. But even then,
You're not done, because the finishing touches matter. The smooth outer casing, the polished surfaces, the final adjustments to ensure perfect alignment. All of this requires additional time, effort, and money. And when everything is finally complete, when the dust settles, when the machines stop, you're left with a single structure, a giant pyramid standing in the desert. And now comes the question, was it worth it? Because by this point, the total cost could easily reach around $2 to $3 billion, maybe even more. Let that sink in. Billions of dollars, years of effort, thousands of workers, just to recreate something that already exists. And here's the emotional part that no one talks about. Despite all this effort, despite all this technology, we still might not be able to match the original perfectly. There's something about the Great Pyramid that feels beyond engineering. Something about its precision, its alignment, its mystery, that makes you wonder, did ancient builders know something we don't? Or were they simply more determined, more focused, more driven by purpose than we are today? Because in our world, everything is about speed, profit, efficiency. We build fast, we build smart, but we rarely build forever. And that's the difference. The Great Pyramid wasn't built for convenience. It was built for eternity. And maybe that's why, even today, it stands as a challenge, not just to our technology, but to our mindset. Because the truth is, we can build skyscrapers taller than the pyramid. We can create cities in the desert. We can even send humans into space. But when it comes to recreating something as simple and yet as complex as the Great Pyramid, we hesitate. Not because we can't, but because we don't see a reason to. And maybe that's the biggest difference between us and them. They build to be remembered. We build to be efficient.
So the next time you see the Great Pyramid, don't just look at its size. Think about what it represents. A time when humans took on the impossible, without machines, without technology, without limits. And somehow, they succeeded. Which leaves us with one final question. If they could do it back then, why does it feel so difficult today? Maybe the answer isn't in the tools. Maybe it's in the people. And maybe, just maybe, the real mystery of the Great Pyramid isn't how it was built, but why we're no longer willing to build like that anymore.